After the events of the Melbourne-Collingwood qualifying final, the AFL want to implement a Maynard rule. Let's get into it. So the AFL today released a 9-page document outlining some rules, rule tweaks, and some proposed changes that they want to make ahead of the 2024 season. This needs to go through, talks with all the other, 18 clubs, and a final decision on most of these or all of these sort of tweaks and changes will be done in February before the opening round bounce. So right off the bat, I mentioned that the league is looking at putting a Maynard rule in, and if you've been living under a rock since September, what happened in that first qualifying final was Angus Brayshaw was running to kick the ball. Maynard jumped to smother, twisted his body with the momentum or whatever you want to sort of call it, accidentally collected Brayshaw in his head. Brayshaw gets knocked out, can't play the rest of the game, can't play the rest of the season, and Maynard gets sent straight to the tribunal under what Laura Kane wanted him to go straight to the tribunal. After a 4-hour hearing, which felt like it went for so long if you were following it sort of in real time, Maynard was let off. He made reasonable attempts. The Collingwood's defence and all that sort of defence, under the current rules, he did everything in his power to sort of, was accidental, it wasn't on purpose to knock him out or anything sort of like that. He gets off, and he's a very integral part of our premiership in 2023. What is the rule and what are they sort of wanting to tweak? It's pretty much just wording. It's just taking out that sort of grey area that most clubs are sort of like, there were clubs that weren't on Maynard's side, and they were like, what is he doing? He should have got suspended, blah, blah, blah. They won't come out and tell us who those clubs were. One of them obviously being Melbourne. But this is what the proposed change is. The player must take all reasonable steps to avoid making contact with their opponent's head and or minimize the force of any high contact. So what they're pretty much saying there is that if you electing to smother, electing to bump, or whatever that may be, this is particularly in regard to the smother, you have to make all reasonable steps to avoid making head-high contact. So if you forgot what it looks like this. So as you can see, as Maynard tries, jumps to try and smother, he wants to sort of avoid making any sort of contact by sort of twisting his body so he doesn't go full force into him, accidentally collects him in the head. So they're trying to say that if you have to take all reasonable steps, otherwise you are going to be severely punished. They want any high contact with an opponent that is at least low impact to be deemed careless. So if you go to smother the ball and don't make any attempt, that's straight away careless conduct under these proposed new changes to the rules. You have to show clear intent that you are taking the reasonable steps, and that's the key words, reasonable steps, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about them in 2024, to avoid the high contact or reduce its force. So that's the Maynard rule, or the rule tweak that they're trying to bring in for 2024. Look, I know that concussion is a hot topic at the moment. We've seen Mitch McGovern from Carlton, he got collected high or, in the head, concussed in training. Josh Carmichael as well. So he's had two head highs, two concussions in the last 2 or 3 months. And we've seen old mate Nathan Murphy. He's copped, so many. So concussion, I'm all for minimizing concussion and minimizing, or looking after the players. Don't get me wrong. I want these players to not have that sort of, that CTE and lose their memory like we're seeing all these older sort of players in not only football, but the NFL, rugby, and all these other sports that are high contact. And we don't want to see that. We want to stamp that all out as much as we can. What I do like is the proposed, I can't remember, the concussion board. I can't remember what their actual title is, but it was to minimize a lot of the force in training, because there's been a handful of sort of concussions that happened during training. Josh Carmichael, Mitch McGovern being the two most recent ones. To minimize that, contact during training, so it doesn't happen during training, which I'm all for that. But a rule sort of like this, I get taking out that sort of grey area. We're just, until it happens again, we can't really judge it, in my opinion. Is it a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction? Maybe. The rules were well before that. Like, you can clearly see that he's making that sort of smother, and I'm not going to get into it all again, but it's all about those reasonable steps. They're going to be the two big key words. The next one, which is another sort of knee-jerk reaction, and I say that in quotes, is the run-down tackles. Now, you remember Dan Butler's run-down tackle would be here, if you don't remember it. So they're looking at sort of tweaking that as well, because the run-down tackle where the tackling player has contributed to the force. So what they don't want to see is, you're sort of run-down tackling and you're driving, the tackler's driving the player into the ground, making the player with the ball sort of hit their head because their arms are pinned and stuff like that because they're getting driven into the ground. The AFL, after that, when they're setting these guidelines or these outlines to the club, they're saying we don't want to eliminate the rundown sort of tackle, because that rundown tackle is so beautiful when it is when it's done to sort of perfection. It's incredible. Like you think of the Darcy Moore sort of one as well on Ollie Henry earlier this year. So they're trying to just eliminate any sort of head high and sort of trying to deter players from doing those actions. Does that mean that players are going to be sort of scared to run down tackle, or will there just be new techniques? So instead of sort of driving into their back, I don't really know. I'm not a player. I'm not in these high pressure situations. I'm literally just watching it on TV or watching it at the game. But is there another sort of technique that they're sort of looking at? I'd hate to see the rundown tackle get stamped out of the game because players are trying to catch up to a player and then just sort of, not intentionally, but sort of dumping them or driving them to the ground. So I would hate for that to happen. A few more tweaks and rule changes that the AFL sort of have outlined that I'll just sort of rattle off now is they want to change the cost per tribunal hearing from $10,000 to $13,000 in the AFLM and $5,000 to $6,500 in the AFLW. So there's less tribunal cases for players who don't need to sort of really go to the tribunal. Also, there's still no word about what the AFL want to do with substitutes. I think they're just going to leave it as it is. I'd rather see, I reckon, just give us 5 on the bench. It's a tactical sub now. There's still no, first it was brought in as a concussion sub, and then it was an injury sub, and now it's a tactical sub. So I think clubs are saying that they want 5 on the bench. I'm happy with 5 on the bench. I think Craig McRae said 5 on the bench at one stage. But what I do want to see is, and what's sort of been talked about here as well, is that on, Thursday nights when the teams are getting picked, or Wednesday nights, whenever the teams are getting picked, I want to see 23 players named. I don't want to see Finn McRae dropped, even though he's going to be the substitute. And Collingwood did do it a couple of times. I don't know if other teams did it as well, but Collingwood did do it a couple of times where they would name their substitute. I think we need to name our substitute, or if you're not sort of naming the substitute for a tactical reason, just name 5 on the bench, and that's fine. 5 on the bench and 3 or 4 emergencies, and then you pick one of your subs from the bench or wherever that may be. I think that's a better idea going forward. A few more is the umpires want to, instead of like report, okay, Brayden Maynard, you're, reported, blah, blah, blah. They want to refer incidents to the MRO as well as report them. So instead of saying that's a reportable offence, they want to say you're going to be referred straight to the MRO. The AFL is probably going to tick that one off so the umpires can do both. They want to remove the requirement that the potential to cause injury must be serious under the striking charge. So we've seen a lot last season where players would sort of swing their arm back or punch players in the gut. Nick Dacos did it. Was it one of the Essendon players did it to Nick Dacos as well? And I've been really what's the word I'm looking for? I've been the same in my sayings with this. Any sort of punch to the gut should be a week. I don't care if it's Nick Dacos, and I said this as well. I don't care who it is. If you're going to turn around, punch someone in the gut, I don't care even if it's a soft punch or whatever it may be, that should be a week. We shouldn't be teaching our kids that are watching this that, oh, that's only a $3,000 fine or whatever it may be. So taking away the term must be serious under the striking charge, I think it's a good. We might see a couple of 1 weekers if someone turns around and punches someone in the gut, or someone, you know, hits them from behind, like we saw. Was it Willie Rioli do to Nathan Murphy, where he kind of hit him from, he swung his arm from behind as well. So I like that. I really do. Any sort of punch to the gut, or any sort of punch anyway, not so much jumper punching because they're not really punching, but any sort of punch or whack or strike should be minimum a week, and I definitely do believe in that. And the last one is that the AFL wants to prohibit club officials from either whistling or making other loud noises to communicate from the interchange bench to certain players on the ground because of it interrupts the broadcast audio. I haven't really heard any broadcast audio interruptions by interchange officials whistling or anything like that, but you know, this is just the AFL trying to do their own sort of thing. But look, these are just been proposed sort of changes by the AFL, proposed rule tweaks. Let me know your thoughts down below. Do you agree with them? Do you not agree with them? Would there be any other tweaks? I'd love to do a video of rules that I would bring in if I was in the High Commission. That's all CEO. That's a good one. Maybe I'll pocket that one and do it one day. But anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts down below. But until then, like, comment, subscribe, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your pets, and until next time, double shaggers. I'll swoop you later.